Right, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Martin Warnes, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I will be chairing the meeting. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main stairs or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would all speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when not speaking. Introductions. Members of the committee and officers will introduce themselves starting from my left. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras. But please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. We will have a break at 7:30.
I ran and introduced the members.
Yeah, at the appropriate time. I'm just being told I need to introduce the members first, okay? So could I ask my Vice Chair to introduce himself?
Yeah, Councillor Sam McCarthy, representing Shrub End Ward and Vice Chair of the committee.
Councillor Robert Davidson, Mersey and Highfleet Ward.
Councillor Tracy Arnold, Stanway Ward.
Councillor Kaylee Rippingale, Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Jackie McLean, Markston Lair Ward.
Catherine Spindler, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Councillor Lee Tate for Prettygate Ward.
Simon Grady, Planning Officer.
Chris Harden, Planning Officer.
Lucy Mondon, Planning Manager.
Simon Cairns, Joint Head of Planning.
Martin Mason, Essex County Council Highways.
Robert Carmichael, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you for that, and welcome to our new members of the committee. You are very welcome, and we look forward to your participation. So to continue the welcome and announcements, we will have a break at 7:30 p.m. or at an appropriate time. There are toilets on every floor in the building, and an induction loop is in the room. Whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, unlike certain licensing functions carried out by the local authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies, reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure, rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these discussions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek a judicial review and or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authority's rules. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 2, which is substitutes. First of all, are there any apologies? I've got none down. Are there any substitutes? You're all representing yourselves today. Fantastic.
Just to note that Councillor Gocher is not here yet. We haven't had apologies. If Councillor Gocher is not present by the time we get to the start of the first substantive item, he cannot take part in that item.
Thank you for that clarification, Robert. So we move to item 3. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillors must publicly announce the item number and whether the interest is disclosable, pecuniary, or any other registrable or non-registrable interest. I note there's none. We'll move on to item 4, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Item 5, have your say. If anyone has a petition they wish to present to me on any of the items on the agenda this evening, please do so now. I've noted that nobody's stepped forward. So item 6 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of April 2024 are before the committee for confirmation. Are there any issues of accuracy? I note there are no issues, so can I ask for a proposer and a seconder to accept the minutes proposed by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Robertson? May we therefore go to the vote. All those in favour of the minutes, please show. Thank you. Is there anyone abstaining? Anybody? Right, everybody. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we now move to item 7, which is the items on the agenda. We have 3 items before us. Item 7.1 is application number 212507, land north of Wyver Farm, London Road, Stanway. And the recommendation is for approval, and presenting officer will be Lucy Mondon, and we have Steve Hatton from the public speaking in favour, and Councillor Scott Boutel will also be addressing the committee. Then we will move on to item 7.2, which is application number 232295, 50 London Road, Stanway, Colchester, and the recommendation will be to approve subject to finalisation of a unilateral undertaking securing community leisure contributions and RAMs. And the presenting officer will be Chris Harden, and a member of the public speaking against will be Helen Malloy, and a member of public speaking for will be Andrew Feasey, and Councillor Scott Bigtell will address the committee. Finally, we will consider item 7.3, which is application number 231933, Yara Family Resource Centre, Stanway Green, Stanway. Recommendation is for approval, and the presenting officer will be Simon Grady, and there will be a member of the public speaking for it, whose name is Alison Cox, and the committee will be addressed by Councillor Scott Boutel. So, thank you, and we shall therefore ask for item 7.1, and I'll ask Lucy to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just waiting for the presentation to share.
Chair, while we're waiting, may I interject, please?
On what basis would you like to interject?
Information.
Sorry, on what basis would you like to interject, Councillor Davis?
I'd just like to alert the officers that we got details of the membership of this committee on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and we got notice of the amendments yesterday at 4 p.m. when, of course, we were still in the town hall with full council. So really, it's been very difficult to have a lot of information about this, well, all of the applications, but in particular the first one. And I am conscious it's a large application, 600 houses, and a lot of detail has been given. So in other words, we haven't had time to consider it as much as we'd like to. No site visits either. That's just a matter of fact.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. So we gratefully note your comments, and I'll pass over to Lucy to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Yes, this application seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access for the erection of up to 600 dwellings, public open space and associated infrastructure, as well as provision of land for a primary school and early years nursery. I have the application site outlined here in red. To the north of the site is the A12. To the east is the existing Wyver Farm development. And then running along the south of the site is London Road, Between London Road and the application site are some residential properties as well as an existing commercial site that includes a garden centre, nursery and commercial premises, restaurants. And along the western side of the site is Turkey Cock Lane. You'll see on this plan there's some grey shaded areas and they represent easements. One's for a gas main and one is for a water main. And there's also a dotted line running north-south through the site that exits the site and then carries on south to London Road, and that represents a public right-of-way. As I mentioned, the application is in outline with all matters reserved other than access, so that essentially means that all matters of detail in terms of layout, scale, appearance, etc. would all come in at a later stage under other applications, reserved matters applications. So with an outline application, you're assessing the principle of development as well as a decision on general principles for how the site could be developed. In this particular case, the principle of development itself is established by the site being allocated for development in the council's local plan. And I've set out the site allocation policy in the committee report, but I just thought it would be useful to illustrate how this site relates to the allocation. So I've annotated this plan just as follows. So this orange area is the residential allocation, and that also includes an area of land for a primary school and nursery. The green area is a landscaped area, and that's for open space designed to preserve a separation with Copford. And you'll notice that some of the residential allocation sits outside the red-lined application site, so I'll just explain those areas. The two areas I've just highlighted here in grey, they are existing residential properties, so they would not be proposed for development and they're not included in the application site. This area in purple already benefits from planning permission under the site allocation. It's for 66 dwellings. It's currently under construction by Persimmon. And this area in yellow is the Almshouse site, and you will have seen in the report that that is slightly separate in the site allocation policy. It has some different requirements. So the planning application before you is the area that remains in orange, as well as an area to the north of the landscaped area and also the south. The access points that are under consideration, I'll just point them out at this point, but I will show some slides a little bit later on. There's an access point from Red Panda Road, which is on the eastern side of the site, about halfway up from the existing Wyver Farm development, and then an access point onto London Road on the western side of the site. So just to give a better idea of context, this is an aerial photograph. Again, I've just indicated the application site here in red. You have the A12 to the north, the existing Wyvern Farm development to the east. Further east is the Stane Park development, and further east still is the Tollgate Centre. London Road running along the south, and some of these larger buildings you can see here, that's part of the existing commercial site that I mentioned. So you can see from the aerial photograph that the site is largely open fields. There are tree and hedgerows, but they are generally confined to the periphery of the site, although there is this area of tree and hedge planting through the centre of the site, which I'll show some more information about shortly. I'll just run through some site photographs. I'll concentrate mainly on views from the road frontages and then the views into the site from those points. I'll start off on the eastern side of the site on London Road, head down to the western frontage onto London Road, along Turkey Cock Lane, and then we'll head right over to the east to the connection point with Wyvern Farm and looking at the eastern side of the site. So starting off on London Road, looking west, the application site is on the right-hand side of the photograph. You can see a strong hedgerow boundary along the road frontage and a thick hedge boundary with an adjacent property, which is just in the centre of the photograph. At the time of the site visit, that property was being used as a dental practice. Looking in the opposite direction, again, you can see the hedgerow boundary. There's an old field gate just where I'm indicating here, and you can see the existing Wyver Farm development running alongside the edge of the site. Looking into the site from that point, this is the thick hedge alongside the dental practice that I mentioned on the left-hand side, and there's the Wyver Farm development running all the way along the eastern side of the site. You can also see the sporadic tree and hedge planting through the centre of the site, and further in the distance there is a thick tree belt which the A12 sits beyond that point. Heading down to the other end of London Road, the site is just on the right hand side where you can possibly see somebody walking on the pavement there. I'll just indicate it with the pointer. It's a bit more naturalistic at this end of the site with a more overgrown hedge. Looking in the opposite direction, you can see some gaps in the hedge, but the site is not particularly visible from this point on London Road. Heading on to Turkeycock Lane, this photograph on the left is approximately halfway up Turkeycock Lane in terms of its relationship to the application site, but noting that this central parcel of land is not included as part of the application site, although it is in the local plan as open space. Looking in the opposite direction back to London Road, there's a cluster of properties as you get close to London Road, and the application site does sit behind these properties, although there's no built form proposed in that area. It's part of the landscaped area. But you can see the how Turkeycock Lane compares to London Road. It's quite different in character. Further on up Turkeycock Lane rather, you have the northwestern part of the site. So this is the thick tree belt alongside the A12, and then looking directly east through the site on the right hand photograph. Moving on to Wyver Farm and the eastern side of the site, this is the connection point at Red Panda Road. You can see that the connection point has been provided as part of that development. And if you were standing in this photograph and walking and turning to your right, you see the northern part of the site. So again, there's the thick tree belt with the A12 beyond, and the right hand photograph has Wyver Farm development fronting onto this area. Left-hand photograph looking directly west towards Turkeycock Lane, and then turning to your left towards London Road again to the south. You can see the continuation of Wyver Farm along the edge of the site, and also that tree and hedge area through the centre of the site here. And then just a close-up view of that particular parcel fronting London Road where we started looking at the site photographs. I'll just talk you through the submitted parameter plans as an outline. As I mentioned, there's not required to be any detail, but there are parameter plans to set out how the site would be developed. This first plan is a land use plan, so the areas in grey are the development parcels, and the sandy creamy area is the site for the school site. And this plan also shows the general layout of the adjacent Persimmon site and how there's a vehicular connection point through into the school site from that point. This next plan is a phasing plan, so it just shows how the development would be phased. It would be working from east to west. And this is a green and blue infrastructure plan, so showing the main areas of open space and landscaping and SUDS features, also the green routes through the site. And this is probably a good opportunity just to show how the access arrangements work, that there would be a main spine road through the site that comes down to London Road. And this is just one of the reasons why the application's been referred to committee, because as you'll see, part of the spine road just comes through that landscaped area there, although as you'll see, it does provide a nice clear green route through the site that would also be for public transport as well. But this plan just shows the main green areas that would be provided. On the subject of landscaping, this is the tree retention and removal plan. There's a lot of information on the key, but essentially the areas of proposed tree removal are the areas shaded in red. So you'll see there are just points where there would be tree removal for access points, some minimal removal through the site, and then some tree and hedgerow removal within the school site, and that's principally because it's a requirement of Essex County Council for them taking on the school site. But these trees would be directly compensated for, and we also have our 10% increase in tree canopy cover in addition to that. This plan shows density, so maximum density is the lighter colour is a lower density, and then you'll see that there's higher density on the eastern side of the site. So there's a gradient here from higher density where there's the more built up area of Wyver Farm, and then heading over to lower density as you move further east to the more open area of Turkey Cock Lane. This plan shows vehicular routes. As I mentioned, you've got the main vehicular route through the site and then some secondary routes into the residential areas. The pink dot here indicates the vehicular connection point to the Persimmon site, and then the orange circle represents an indicative location for an emergency vehicular access for the school site, which is also a requirement of Essex County Council. So this is the cycle route. You can see it's quite extensive in terms of cycle provision. You have the main route through the site on the Spine Road, but you also have a secondary route through the landscaped area through the centre of the site, as well as connection points moving north-south, including a cycle route south to the eastern frontage on London Road. And these green circles show the connection points. So you can see there's connection points to London Road, Turkey Cock Lane, also heading into Wyver Farm itself, and the existing or the Persimmon site currently under construction. Similarly, this is the pedestrian routes. The difference here is that the primary pedestrian route is through the landscaped area through the centre of the site, but again you have these north-south connection points, and also you can see the connection points to wider network in terms of Wyver Farm and the Persimmon site, including a connection point through for the public right-of-way that leads down to London Road. So I'll just leave you with an illustrative layout that was submitted with the design and access statement. So this would in no way be approved at all, because detailed plans would need to come in as part of reserved matters. But I just thought it would be useful as an illustration to show how some of these parameter plans would be drawn together and how they would sit amongst a built environment. So it's just for illustrative purposes. So the recommendation is for approval, and that would be subject to a number of conditions to secure matters of principle, as well as requirements for the reserved matters. Some of the conditions have been slightly amended in terms of their wording, so that's why I've included them on the amendment sheet, just for absolute clarity. Section 106 is also recommended to secure off-site mitigation, and the recommendation takes into account the site allocation, planning policy and other material planning matters as part of an overall planning balance. But I'll now hand over to the committee for your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. So we have one speaker from the public floor, and I'll take them first, and then followed by visiting councillor Scott Patel. So would Steve Hatton like to come forward? And can I remind you that you will have 3 minutes in which to speak, and the bell will go after 2 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members. My name's Steve Hatton, and I'm the Plan Design Director at Western Homes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. We're incredibly pleased that the application is before the committee today, and we commend the officer's report to you. As you'll note, this application has been under consideration for some time, having first been submitted in 2021. This has enabled a very close scrutiny to be given to all relevant planning considerations, notably highways impact, which I'll come to shortly. First of all, I'd like to highlight that the site before you is allocated as part of the local plan, which was adopted in 2022 by full council. The officer's report clearly outlines within section 2 the background to the site allocation. The nature of this allocation ensures that the principle of development carries full weight in the assessment of the planning application tonight. With regard to housing delivery, this site forms a central part of the council's 5-year housing land supply. In fact, as outlined in section 7.9 of the officer's report, the first 50 new homes are forecast to be delivered as early as the monitoring year 2025-26. Whilst this is a very tight timescale to achieve, as a specialist house builder delivering around 1,000 homes each year, we are confident that this will be possible with a positive resolution tonight. As you would expect, we've liaised closely with your officers and have endeavoured to keep key stakeholders, such as Stanway Parish Council, informed with updates at the various stages of the process. We have therefore been able to take on board the views of both the Parish Council and local residents during consultation. Alongside this, whilst we note and respect the nature of the public comments submitted, for a scheme of this magnitude, we feel the comments received are relatively few in number and raise matters which are covered in detail within the submission, or alternatively are best placed to be considered at the reserve matters stage when the detail of the housing and layout is being assessed. In our view, the work carried out by the council at the site selection stage has no doubt ensured that the right site has been allocated in the right place to ensure minimal landscape heritage, drainage and ecology impacts. There are no issues or technical objections outstanding on the application and very few public objections. In short, the site allocation process has ensured that the right houses will be delivered in the right place where they are needed with as little impact as possible. In terms of planning balance and overall conclusions, in summary, the proposals will secure the delivery of up to 600 new family homes with policy-compliant affordable housing. To stress, this is 30% affordable, which is around 180 homes, with 80% being rented and 20% shared ownership. We provide for generous open space, facilitate the delivery of a new primary school site if the need arises, provide new cycle and pedestrian routes, enhancements to local public transport infrastructure and off-site highway works. We look forward to submitting the reserve matters details very shortly and would be delighted to deliver high-quality new housing in the near future. As such, we ask that you support the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission accordingly. Finally, I'd like to add that we have had extensive discussions with National Highways for over 2 years. And as part of that, in the background, we've also been discussing the scheme with Essex Highways. All highways matters have been extensively considered. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr Hatton. And I will call Councillor Scott Butell to come and address the committee. And could I ask any councillors wishing to speak, if you could indicate to my Vice Chair, and he will keep a list for me. Okay, Leslie, you have 5 minutes and the bell will sound after 4.
I don't think I'll be the full 5 minutes. It's basically just to drill down on some of the 106 contributions and a couple of suggestions. The community facilities, have you got a lot of detail there? Because Janisma Park, that could be a very beneficial big facility for Stanway, but there's been no consultation yet with the residents of Stanway as to what they'd actually like to see in this land that's been bequested to them. Scout Hut Village Hall, there's no detail there as to what that actually is for, Lucy. I don't know if it's tied in with the Essex County Council Winstery Road scheme as a footpath going from Villa Road through to the school. Tollgate Hall, Villa Road, again, could we have some detail? Because I know in the past 106 money has been used for things that we've already paid for but haven't been looked after, and we've had to pay for them again. So I'd just like just confirmation that we're not subsidising the Tollgate Hall when there is finance available from the management company to do that. Copford Village Hall, Tickety Boo and Lakelands Community Centre. I'm really pleased, Lucy, that you've managed to get the financial contributions towards the primary health care, because that's something that you and I often bang on about. The new school, I'm assuming that Essex County Council have done their sums and they know where these children are going to go to for the senior school. So just checking that all ties in nicely. A plea that I often make is, and especially although this isn't actually in my ward, I think it would be really useful because there is a bus route going through there, is to get the developers to put the enforcement markings in. So junction protection markings, because we know, we've seen it time and time again, when, people move in, not necessarily parking in the allocated spaces that they're supposed to, and it can lead to a style up, especially on a bus route. So I think we need to see if we can condition that as well, please. One of the other things that I wanted to ask is, because I'm really happy to see about the acoustic barrier, but that bund by the A12 at the moment is protected by trees, but eventually when people move in, I just wonder what protection there is from people accessing the bund and hence the A12. And in the past we've put fencing there, developers have put fencing in. But I think we need to tie that down a little bit more as to who's actually responsible for the fencing. So, we've got a case now where it's a very old estate and the fences are literally just falling to bits, but nobody actually owns them, so that's quite challenging. Martin, I love the financial contributions for the new improved bus service. I know that there's one that's already started. It's not full-time by any means, but will the bus service link up to Marks Tay Station as well? Because I think that would be really useful. The improvements in the vicinity of the 1408 and the Stanway Western Bypass. What works were you thinking of doing? What additional works were you doing there? Because again, as you know, that area can get quite congested, and you've only quite recently put a new crossing point in there, signalised crossing point, so that is good. As I said, I'm pleased to see that bus route will be opened up and link in with Stane Park, so it'll be good. The widening of Redge Hill and Walk to provide the cycle link, where will that cycle link into, or is this just another piecemeal thing that we're looking at the moment? And as you're aware, we're looking to try and get a crossing point in on Tollgate Road and the steps on the embankment that links through to the main part of the village. And I'm getting the cycle, shut up, you've nearly finished, Leslie. I have nearly finished. The Toucan crossing, is that the Toucan crossing near, I knew that there was one coming by the Lakelands Community Centre, but is this one nearer the top going towards Costa Princess Charlotte, so that the students can get to the schools there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott-Littell. And could I ask Lucy to come in at this stage, and if she could take account of the remarks and add anything she wishes to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there are a lot of projects listed in the Section 106 for community facilities and for sport and leisure. So they are they're not a cascading list, it's an either or. So it would be dependent on what projects are more prevalent at the time. So with Yansma Park, we have potential projects listed from the parish council. That's for a variety of things, and as you say, it's not necessarily finalised, some of those. The Scout Hall, Villa Road and Tollgate Hall, Copford Village Hall, etc. It's all for capacity reasons and to enhance capacity, because all of the contributions need to mitigate the impact of the development itself. So, for example, the Scout Hall, Villa Road, the prime project would be additional toilets and changing areas. There are some repairs required and also potentially money towards a rebuild, actually. Copford Village Hall, it's currently oversubscribed at the moment, so the additional residents here would certainly require extra capacity. So that's projects such as toilet facilities again, entrance lobby, car park improvements, etc. And Lakelands Community Centre, you've mentioned, it would be for a additional sports facility. With regards to the bus route, I'll pass over to Martin in a moment so he can come back to you on the highway matters. But with regards to the bus route, we have a condition recommended for details of that spine road. So they would need to submit details as part of the reserved matters to actually show all the detail about how that spine road and bus route would work. But I'll pass over to Martin if he can answer some of the questions about highway matters.
Thanks, Lucy. Can you hear me okay, Leslie?
Yes, thank you.
Good. In terms of the bus service contribution, the intention is to spend that on a new bus service running between Markstay train station and into the city centre. So I think that hopefully should reassure you in terms of your point you're making about a connection to the railway station. The London Road, Stanway Western Bypass roundabout, what we have negotiated with Western Homes is an either-or option for the 106, Section 106 agreement. So they have the ability to develop a scheme under a Section 278 with us. So we would obviously work closely with them to come up with a scheme for the roundabout to improve capacity and potentially additional more crossing facilities. But if that doesn't work out, then we have the ability to collect a contribution instead. And then you also mentioned the Red Shillman Walk and the Stanway Western Bypass. There are two token crossings proposed for the Stanway Western Bypass. One is for the community centre, and then the other one is on the back of the application, the O&H residential application, and improving the Red Shillman Walk between that and the school. So basically the 106 for this site will be set up such that if that doesn't come forward as part of that application, then it will be secured on the back of this application. Is that okay?
Thank you, Martin. Indications of speakers are Councillor McLean and Councillor Davison so far. What I will do is, if anyone wants to come back a second time, I'll give anyone the opportunity that hasn't spoken to speak first. So, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the bus route going through the site, will it be secured for that area to go through and then to come round? So it's going to be going in and out, or will that be en route to Markstay? Because I wanted to know how everyone was going to get to the school. Because to walk from the road in, I don't know how far that will be, or distance, and with the way the people are these days, they don't like to walk too far. But I mean, but if it was accessible and easy to get to, maybe we could improve that, and it would be good for them anyway. So I didn't know if they would actually have a bus route going right the way through that you could actually hop on and hop off for the school, because people always worry with the children going to school. The other issue was the going on to Turkeycott Lane. Will there be any exits onto Turkeycott Lane? I thought was there one or not?
Okay, Martin, if you'd like to respond,
please.
Yeah, the intention is to spend the public transport contribution on a new service from Markstay to the city centre, as I mentioned, and the intention is that it would come along London Road and use the spine road through the application site, because clearly we have to ensure that money that's being paid by Western Homes is to mitigate the impact of their development. So yes, it would come along the spine road through the development site, straight past the school site, and actually the intention is to take it through the existing, for want of a better phrase, Zoo Estate, the Red Panda Road, etc., through to Stone Park, and then across to Lakelands, Plover Road, and into town that way, rather than using London Road, Lexington Road, because that's already quite well served. And then your other point about Turkey Cock Lane, there will be a pedestrian cycle connection to Turkey Cock Lane, but not a vehicular.
That's perfect, thank you. That's just what I wanted to have secured, because I just thought, you know, it could be then just a slip road through for certain cars. But that's good. I'm glad to hear that, because I think we're so short on buses on that route with coming through. The other one is the suds for the sewage works, because they're going to be coming off into their ponds, and is it going to go across the road to the actual pumping station? Please.
There's conditions recommended to secure greater details of the suds. The general idea is that it needs to work in a way that it recreates natural infiltration. And then I'm just finding the part of the report where it's referenced. So the drainage shows catchment discharging to there's a central ditch across the centre of the site. So that's the main point that it would discharge to, and then it would eventually infiltrate to the west. So it would go across to the west. But as I say, there's further details that would come in as part of a detailed SUD scheme. And it's set out in the reports that have been submitted that it may also include additional features such as rain garden planters, green roofs and rainwater harvesting as well. So there may be additional measures that would be introduced as part of detailed planning submissions.
That's good, but we've really got to be careful, because the area floods so much down there. The bus stop's constantly flooded. I think they've jetted it, so it's helping. But, you know, going on that route, knowing it very well, living on the road, working by the road, you know, a lot of people are flooded out and do have issues. So I think we need to be mindful of that we're not going to be sort of backlogging a bigger problem later on down the line if we can just, you know, assess it and actually get things running more fluid, because the Angling Water are up against it with having to try and keep all the ways clear. You know, every Church Lane floods, everything's flooding because everything needs digging out, ditches and all the rest of it. So it's a bit of a mess around there at the moment, and the roads are all breaking up because of it. So it's just a, you know, way of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. And Councillor Davison next.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I've got a few queries. Really, obviously, this is only for outline and everything except access is yet to be determined. So on access, Lucy, I'm a little bit concerned that there's very poor access to the church and Church Lane and also the garden centre that's already there. So I don't know whether there's any back entrances from the garden centre. Is there an access through the Persimmon site perhaps as well that will join up them? Yep. And then the other thing that concerns me slightly is that all the green space, the play areas and everything else on Turkey Cock Lane, obviously there's a nice slope there, it makes sense to have that as green. But when you consider this 600 application with Wyver Farm adjacent to it, there's nowhere to kick a ball or no play area, there's no green heart for the community. And I just think that's a real opportunity missed. So I'd like to think when it comes back to full planning, that actually there's at least somewhere where kids can kick a ball and possibly a playground as well, nearer the Wyver Farm end. I mean, you've got 2,000 people, of which probably 300 will be kids, and actually the only place they can go at the moment is down to Turkey Cock Lane, where the parents won't be anywhere near them, or there's no supervision. The Spine Road, I was just hoping that Martin Mason might be able to manage that, make that a 20-mile-an-hour Spine Road, because it is estate road as opposed to a main thoroughfare. And I think that would be really helpful, especially bearing in mind that the cycle route is actually crossing that spine road in one place, if not two. That would be a good suggestion, I think. And the other thing I was really just clarifying is that the detailed planning, when it does come back, could that come back with a more substantive 106 package that would have been negotiated by then? Because at the moment it's full of ifs and buts and maybes and hopeful. And I'm just concerned it's a major development, and we do need to see that 106 before it's actually signed off. That could be, according to the developer, very soon. So I'm happy for it to come back to full planning if that's easier. Thank you, Chairman.
Over to you, Lucy.
Yes, just to confirm on the landscape side of things, the application would provide at least 7 hectares of open space throughout the site. And I've also included some additional conditions to ensure that at least 10% of the site area within the developable area, so not including that landscape buffer on the left, would be required as public open space in accordance with our planning policies. And there'd also be incidental areas of open space and play throughout the development as well. So that would be included. With the section 106, just to clarify, it's not ifs, buts, maybes. It's including several projects that are necessary to mitigate the development, but it's including a number of projects so that there's options essentially for us, because they are all needed. So it's just giving us extra opportunities to pay for these projects. So, and then the alternative arrangements that Martin was talking about, they're essentially a fail-safe for if particular means of mitigation aren't secured by another development, that it would be secured under this one, whichever development comes first, essentially. So it is necessary in those terms. So it's just making sure that we are getting the mitigation that's required and not relying on another development that may or may not come forward first.
And Martin, would you like to reply to the...
No worries, thank you, Chair. The spine road would actually be 30 miles an hour because it's designed to a certain street type within the Essex Design Guide, with the 20-mile-an-hour zones feeding off of that, because the road feeds into a 30 at both ends as well. And what we're trying to do, obviously, is ensure that traffic uses that in an appropriate manner, and also it's going to be a bus route. So if it's 20, it's quite hard to calm. So I think we're comfortable we can come up with a design that ensures that the road is safe and carries the traffic appropriately. It can be a bus route, and have the cycle infrastructure associated with that as well. So we should be good, I think.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, well, I understand the constraints of 30 mile an hour and buses and everything else, but it is right next to a new primary school, and there will be children running across that spine road into the housing estate, and I just think a 20 mile an hour even just near the school might be...
Yeah, it's not unusual for us to put a 20 zone in front of the school. Yeah. So that the actual spine road will be 30, but there'll probably be a 20 zone in front of the school.
And sorry, going back to Lucy, Chairman, the green little spaces that were round about the spine road, effectively, that follow the spine road round, they didn't look large enough for any substantial kicking balls and things. I don't know whether you could just put the map up again, the plan up again. So we've got the large area down by Turkey Court Lane, of course, but the other green areas there's one there, I think, near the cycle path, isn't there? Yeah. But
Yes, sorry, it's not letting me shift slides at the moment, but this is just an indicative illustration, so it's not actually what would be proposed necessarily. But if you can see here, you've got some areas through the centre of the site. You obviously do have these larger parkland areas here and a larger amount of open space in the centre of that eastern parcel there. And you have the a northern linear area as well. But what I would say is that the 10% requirement would meet our policy requirements. So I just wanted to point out as well that in terms of the access to the school that you were concerned about, the Spine Road is quite some distance from the school, and Essex County Council are quite clear in that the access to the school should be pedestrian and cycle only. They specifically do not want vehicular roads alongside the school entrance.
So deliveries to the school going how, where?
That would be, there's a vehicular access from the Persimmon site, just here on the eastern side. So it's been designed in that way that Persimmon have provided a connection point there. And as I mentioned, there's also a secondary emergency vehicular access point as well.
Okay, Councillor Davison, does that, yeah, I gather you did raise, which I don't think was addressed, about the possibility of bringing a detailed 106 agreement back to the committee.
Sorry, Chairman, yes, I was suggesting that, but actually, having heard the developer, if the full planning is coming back relatively soon, I think that's the time we can...
Okay, you're happy
as long
with
as,
that?
as long as we're happy with the access now.
Lovely, thank you. So I've got one more speaker, Councillor Rippingdale, and then I think we will move towards making a decision as we are 50 minutes into a meeting.
So I've got a couple of points. I know the area relatively well, having grown up around there. On the London Road, obviously it's quite a busy road. Is there any provision for pedestrian crossing? Mainly because there's businesses the other side of that road, and I'm thinking people on the estate will probably want to access the pub and, you know, the hairdressers and the post office, and you wonder whether there's a safe access across that road because it's quite busy and quite fast. My other comment is that given that I've been on local plan for the last 2 years, you know, there's been quite a focus on active travel and whether there's any provision for like e-cargo bikes on the site, storage, you know, that kind of thing. So like a bike hub, essentially, where we could allow people to rent, you know, the bikes. So I'd quite like to see that, given, you know, it is a cyclable distance to the city centre. I think that would be a good addition to the site.
Thank you. Who wants to answer that? Martin.
I'll go first on the London Road point. It's very much similar to the London Road Stanway Western Bypass roundabout, whereby the 106 will give the developer the chance to develop a scheme for additional crossing of London Road, could even be a control crossing. But obviously, if we can't agree, we're unable to agree those details, there's a contribution in the 106 for us to look to spend in the area at London Road. So we have the opportunity to look at the whole of London Road because the site is stretched over such a vast area. We'd be looking at that whole area from the Stanway Western Bypass towards Turkey Cock Lane.
Councillor Rivingdale, you want to come back?
Yeah, I'm just conscious because obviously there's already a school down there, the St Mary's school. So I just want to make sure that, and you know, there's care facilities and things like that down there. So I just want to make sure that there's provision, not to mention the people who may be a little bit tipsy after coming out of the pub. So
Thank you. And there was the issue over the active travel. Would you like to answer that, Lucy?
Yes, we've included a recommended condition to ensure that there's electric charging for vehicles. The Persimmon site adjacent made contributions in the section 106 towards cycle routes, etc., to the city centre. They're could be additional requirements for a bike hub. We have included that on other sites. If you consider that to be important and necessary to mitigate the impact of the development, we could look to include a bike hub requirement.
Yeah, I think it's important, given that we've just, released the active travel supplementary documents as well. I think we have to be seen to be promoting our own documents. So I think it might not be appropriate, but it would be good to look at mitigating, the impact of the additional cars and encouraging that active travel even into the centre of Stanway, given we know the gridlock that happens there.
Thank you.
I could look to include requirements for a scheme for a bike hub.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Okay, so it's 5 minutes to 7. No more speakers indicating. Can I ask whether there is a proposer to accept the officer's recommendation of approval, and also is the proposer minded to include the addition of a bicycle hub that Councillor Riffingale has suggested? Is there a proposer? Okay, Councillor Riffingale is proposing. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arnold. Could I ask all those in favour to show, please?
That is unanimous, Chair.
That concludes item 7.1, and if Robert passes me the board, we will move on to item 7.2, which is the London Road Stanway application, and we have got one member of the public speaking against, Helen Malloy, and one in favour, Andrew Feasey, and visiting councillor Scott Patel again. Can I ask Chris whether he will present this application?
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for the change of use from the former post office delivery office to a cafe, and there'll also be an installation, an extract system has already been installed. There would be a first floor flat, and we've received some additional parking plans which I'll show you shortly. So I'll just show you the site first of all. So this is the 50 London Road Stanway site. So we've got an existing building here, parking in front, quite a large curtilage to the rear. You've got an outbuilding at the back here, part of which would be used for waste storage for the cafe and for the residential unit, which would be on the first floor. That annotation doesn't mean there would be a residential unit in that outbuilding, just for clarification purposes. And then the site is in two parts. Further down the road, where there's an existing MOT garage, there would be parking available in the forecourt for a minimum of 10 years. I'll just take you through a photograph and then I'll show you the drawings. So this is the site which is annotated, as you can see, the existing building here, parking in front here. There's an access drive down here. There's the outbuilding where you can get access to the rear of the site. It's been claimed that proposal is also for barbers in this building, but that is not part of this application, just to be clear. If a barbers is proposed in that building, then another application would be required and considered, so that is not part of this application. Just an aerial view of the site and surroundings. If you can see my cursor here, here's that rear outbuilding. See long gardens, and then opposite you've got a number of commercial properties with a lot of parking areas, as you can see here. Then this is a more detailed plan showing the area where there would be some parking on the garage forecourt down the road. There's a pedestrian crossing on London Road where people could cross after they've parked and they could walk down to the site. And the rear area of that garage would be providing still parking for the existing business use. This is the plan of the first floor of the main building, showing a one-bedroomed dwelling with a kitchen and a living room and a bathroom. That used to be offices and a toilet for the post office. And this is a drawing we've got of the flue that's on site. The original submission didn't show the flue accurately, so this is a more accurate drawing showing the flue that's already been installed. I'll just take you through some photographs now of the surroundings. So the white building is the property in question. You'll see down this side of the road it is mainly residences. You've got parking in front, and then opposite you've got more commercial properties. There are some residences, but there are a lot of commercial properties as well. You'll note the double yellow lines in front of the site and opposite. And then this is a view looking the other way, showing the building in between residential properties. That's a view looking into the site down the side to the rear outbuilding. There has been some work done to that building, but it's not part of the application in terms of any use of the front of the part of that building. This is the view of the rear of the property. That's the extract system. You'll note there's an annotation that this section could be screened. I think it would be advisable for me to add in a condition for the details of that element to be screened, so I'll cover that later on in the recommendation. It's a longer view of the property from the rear, and then that's a wider view. You'll note that this area has basically been stripped. Certainly it had been at the time of this photograph. That's a view inside the main building for the cafe. You'll note works has been undertaken. It's a view of the garage forecourt down the road. Pedestrian crossing in front of it. That's a view just around the corner of the garage, showing another road down here and another commercial property. And that's the road alongside that other commercial property for future reference. I did visit that road. There is parking potentially available. There was some when I was there, but certainly can't be guaranteed that it wouldn't be packed out in the evening. So I'll just take you back to the main plan. So in terms of extra comments, we've received an extra letter of objection which makes a number of points which I'll just go through. First of all, the letter says they believe that someone is living in the outbuilding to the rear. Where is the parking space going to go for the proposed resident? The rear garden has now started to grow vegetation, and this will encourage vermin. The whole plot should not be used for a business. So in terms of planning considerations, in terms of principle, the site is within the settlement limits and is in a sustainable location, and it was a former commercial use. The local plan policies and the NPPF are supportive of commercial uses in such sustainable locations, and also for residential uses in such locations. And therefore the proposal should be judged on its planning merits. So turning to those merits, residential amenity is obviously a key issue. The scheme is deemed acceptable from an environmental protection point of view. The environmental protection team are happy with the proposal, but that is subject to very detailed conditions as I've outlined in the committee report, and that does include details to be submitted about odour control, which relates to the flue, and there shall be no takeaway from the site, hours of use controls, boundary noise levels and refuse facilities, and the other conditions listed in the report, so they're quite detailed as you can see. It's not considered there are any overlooking issues, so overall, subject to those conditions, the scheme is deemed to be acceptable in terms of its potential impact on neighbouring residential amenity. Those conditions are very important because the building is set within and close to a residential area on that side of the road, although it was previously used as a commercial property, as you'll note. The flue itself in visual terms is reasonably well hidden in terms of its impact on the street scene. It obviously can be viewed from neighbouring gardens, but in terms of impact on the street scene, there's not really any significant impact. So turning to highways issues, these are obviously another important aspect. The Highway Authority are happy with the parking provision level, as you can see from the report, and they would be happy with this provision even if the extra provision of parking was not available on the garage down the road. The conclusion is it's a sustainable location, it's got good transport links, people have got the potential to walk to the property or cycle to the property. There are double yellow lines in front of the property, so people can't actually park on those. So it's deemed that it would not be a detriment to the highway capacity of the area or to highway safety. Now, there's therefore no conflict with local plan policies in respect of parking provision and highway safety, and it does not conflict with the provisions of the NPPF, as you'll see from the report. So turning to other issues, there is adequate amenity space available on site for the occupants of the residential units, and that is one of the suggested conditions. Also note that the unilateral undertaking has now been completed, so that will cover contributions. There's no specific impact on vegetation from this proposal. Some garden vegetation has clearly been removed, but that is not a reason to refuse this application. There's not considered to be any impact on wildlife from this application. And as I've mentioned, the barbers, as raised by objectors, is not part of this application and would need to be separately submitted. So the recommendation is therefore approval now because the unilateral undertaking has been completed, and also I'd like an extra condition about details of boxing part of the flue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask whether Helen Malloy is here? And I understand Councillor Scott Boutel may be able to clarify.
Sadly, she got called into work.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I ask Andrew Feasey to come forward and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak and the bell will go after 2 minutes. Over to you.
Evening all. I'm here on behalf of my client who owns the property. Firstly, he's asked me to apologise for starting the works without planning permission. He's not an English national and he was misadvised by another consultant, and he apologises for starting the works before, and that's to the local community, the council and the local parish. I apologise if I cover points Chris would have gone over. I've just got a few lists here to go through. Firstly, the works are for a change of commercial to commercial. It's already a commercial site. He's seeking to change to another use within a commercial bracket. He already has local staff lined up just to start works. He wishes to seek to employ local people within the area to operate the cafe. As the planner kindly mentioned, the extraction has been installed. That will be noiseless and smellless, which can be conditioned, which my client's happy to submit details for, and that can be submitted if required after the approval as part of the condition. As Chris has stated, the unilateral has been signed and agreed, and RAN's contributions and unilateral will be paid on approval. The rear space to the dwelling, my client is happy to re-landscape that in terms of a garden or garden or landscaping area, as in grass or planting, and there will be on-site cycle parking provided. Operational times for the cafe are within allowance of the area. I believe the times have been stated in the committee report, and these won't be any adverse than already in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I call upon Councillor Scott Littell and to remind Leslie that she has 5 minutes. The bell go after 4, and to say to any councillors who want to speak, indicate to my Vice Chair whilst Leslie is speaking to us. Over to you, Leslie.
When calling this application in, I have given so many reasons as to why, if approval is recommended, it must come to committee. This was on my radar before development started because of the nuisance bonfires Environmental Protection visited. I received further messages once development started and a flue appeared. Planning Enforcement visited the site and told the applicant that a planning application must be submitted, and if they continued work, it would be at their own risk. The application was received in October last year, due to be determined by the 8th of December, but given extra time to the 26th of May. A stop notice was served in December, but as soon as it ran out, work started again. There are allegations of waste being buried following diggers being seen on site. Why were they on site? If correct, who is responsible for investigation and enforcement of either illegal landfill or contaminated land? There are only 2 allocated car parking spaces, one for delivery and the other for the flat. There were no plans submitted for the flat. This may have been permitted development, but the prior approval process was not followed. It has been occupied since before Christmas. Regarding the lack of parking, this apparently is now resolved. The applicant has gone into contract with the garage on the other side and down the road. How will clients know that they must park there to visit the cafe? Will they? Who is going to enforce this? It's unrealistic, it won't happen. Also, the cafe proposes 38 covers. Is the parking realistic for the number of proposed covers? Another question, is the proposed kitchen able to cope with 38 covers? But committee, don't worry about the lack of parking down the road. Highways support another solution. They have said because visitors are unable to park on the London Road because of enforcement markings, visitors can park in the roads off London Road. Which roads? Monbridge has been mentioned. That's a private car park there and is owned by the residents. And you've got enforcement markings at the entrance. None of them are near 50 London Road. St Albright's Crescent and Jubilee Close are private roads. New Farm Road is even further away and has had enforcement markings extended due to parking. There are existing problems with out-of-town parking in Peace Road due to people leaving their vehicles there to catch the bus from London Road. Where are the blue badge holders and staff supposed to park? The solutions proposed are unworkable, unenforceable, and would exacerbate existing parking problems. I am concerned that the space behind the cafe will be used for parking, although objected to by the highways because of vehicle and pedestrian conflict. This will result in further enforcement work. Residents condemned the pre-application flue as an eyesore. However, Environmental Protection have no issues with this. They have asked for detailed conditions to be applied to cover noise and odour control, which I'm pleased to hear as we're getting there. But they agree it's not an attractive feature. But what about the neighbours to the side and the back who see the eyesore? Don't their opinions count? I have been advised that the proposed bar area, the lack of disabled toilets, in fact only one toilet is shown is a matter for building control. What becomes of the proposed bar areas if the times are conditioned to close at 6? The proposed storage area has been developed for use as a barber. No application has been received. However, there was a drawing received 9th of May which infers that this has now been split into part storage, part residential. Hares are now running and rumour has it that the residential part of this is now occupied. There is no permission and no parking. The storage area is kitted out, fully kitted out as a barber's. The front of the garage/storage area has been ripped out and glass doors installed. Why do that for the original storage area? What's going on? Again, no detailed plans. This retrospective application has been nibbled away by the applicant until all the objections appear to have been overcome and approval is recommended. In the eyes of the residents and Stanway Parish Council, the objections have not been overcome. Will there be another retrospective application for the barbers/storage/residential, whatever it is? Who knows? And off we go again. The application has taken much officer time to get to this stage. If approved from the track record, more officer time will be taken up enforcing condition breaches and further changes. Colchester City Council have been reasonable in allowing time for this applicant to rectify one of the worst applications I've ever seen. It remains a bad application, attracting numerous complaints. The worry for residents is the application will be approved because it appears good to go. Even the report submitted to committee is out of date. For all the reasons given, this application needs to be refused by committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott-Littell. Could I ask Chris whether he would take into account all of the views expressed and add anything that he wishes to add?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is correct that work obviously did commence and there was a stop notice. In terms of contamination on the land and putting items into the land to the rear, then that's a separate issue that would be covered by environmental protection. They are aware of sort of digging up the land to the rear, but they certainly need evidence of any contravention before they can take any meaningful action in that respect. Yes, there are 2 parking spaces in front of the site, and one for the deliveries stroke relating to the commercial and one for the actual occupier of the flat upstairs. The parking issues have been resolved in terms of the acceptability to the Highway Authority. There was an original objection, but the further details submitted and further assessment has overcome any Highway Authority objections, as you can see from the detailed comments contained in the committee report. How the people will know where to park, I would assume any website relating to the site could indicate that, and also the owners of the cafe could inform users of the cafe. I could add a condition with some signage on the front saying parking available, down the road. That might be beneficial. Let's see. In terms of the number of covers and the kitchen provision and toilet provision, that will be covered by building regs, basically. If they need to change their scheme to meet building regs, then they need to change it. If that's got any implications for planning, then we would need to be notified. But probably, it may well not have implications in terms of the precise internal layout of the cafe in terms of planning permission. Yes, the comments about parking unavailability in the area is noted. These points were put to the Highway Authority, but the Highway Authority are happy with that, given the fact that the site is in a sustainable location. People could walk to it, people could cycle to it. You can't park on double yellow lines. It was previously a commercial property, which would have entailed commercial vehicles visiting the site. I think we've got to remember that as well. It's not just starting afresh. It would have had commercial vehicles visiting the site previously. In terms of the flue, it's certainly not an attractive feature, but flues never are attractive, to be honest. We can add that condition, as I said, about covering some of the the bottom of the flue. It doesn't impact the street scene. Neighbouring residents could look at it from their gardens or possibly from some of their windows, but nevertheless, as usual, they do not have a right to a view over a neighbouring property. Do you box in the entire flue? Might be pushing it in terms of a reasonable condition. The space behind the area is at the moment just allocated for amenity space. And there's also a parking area for cycles. The building itself, when I visited the site, the outbuilding, it didn't appear to be being used as a residence. If that's changed in the future, then since then we can get an enforcement officer to go and look at that. But it wasn't in occupation when I was there. When I was there, the front of that outbuilding had been laid out and it looked like it potentially could be a barber's, but again, that's not part of this application. It's not open. If that use does commence, then we would have to take enforcement action to say, you know, you can't do that without planning permission. I've got no indication to show that it would commence at this stage, because we've told the applicant and agent you do need planning permission. Retrospective applications are always not welcomed in the community, to be honest. It's not desirable, but you know, it has happened. But now we've got quite a lot of controls in place in terms of highway provision and environmental protection conditions. It did take a lot of officer time, but under the development management procedure, the government does press us to look at ways of overcoming problems that arise during the submission of planning applications, to try and look for a way forward. If there aren't ways forward, then clearly we refuse the application. But in this case, it appeared there was a way forward, and that has led to this favourable recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Right, we've got a number of speakers. I'll take them in the order indicated. So, Councillor Tate first.
Thank you. I'm a very regular user of this road daily. I think it's a nonsense, if I'm entirely honest. I'm wholly unsupportive of this. The people being expected at a cafe to go and park down the road on a garage forecourt, which is a business being currently used. I just think that's a nonsense and quite unrealistic. 30. I mean, obviously, Chris, you've covered a lot of points that they'll be looked at in building regs, but 38 cover restaurant or cafe with one toilet concerns me. And I can recall the good old days when this was a post office, and cars used to drive along, pull up, hop out, go get your parcel. But the thought of people parking down the road and wandering along, it's a lovely utopia, but it's just not reality. I think it's poorly thought out, if I'm entirely honest, and I'm not for it.
Okay, let me take some more speakers before I ask Chris to come back. So, Councillor Spindler, please.
Yeah, hello. I am concerned about the amount of land at the back that takes...
Sorry to interrupt, Catherine. Would you be kind enough to move your microphone closer?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank
Sorry.
you.
I'm concerned about the land at the back. There's an awful lot of it that goes to the back of houses too. I know that the barber's shop is not part of the planning bit at the moment. This says it's going to be a garden. Is that for possibly people that are visiting the cafe that will spill over into the garden, where residents back onto that barber, people waiting for the barbers that isn't part of this planning application, that will also be spilling out into the garden waiting? Will that be a nuisance? Will this garden only be a garden for the flat above, or where is it going with the garden? That's my only concern, majorly, apart from all the other concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spindler. And could I ask Councillor Rippingale to speak, please?
So like Councillor Tate, I remember this as a post office. I'm very concerned about the parking because, as discussed, you wouldn't be there for a long time. As the previous commercial unit, you would literally pop in and out. So for me, the fact that you've got 38 covers and people trying to get a space on an already busy road where there has been a number of accidents along that pedestrian crossing really, really concerns me. My other concern is probably a bit more visual, is that on that side of the road there is a lot of Victorian properties, and judging by the discussion of a potential barbers and a cafe, I'd be really reluctant to allow anything very impactful in signage, just because to keep the character of the area, especially along that side of the road, it is mostly Victorian properties, if I remember correctly. So from my perspective, it would have to, I don't think it's a feasible option to have a cafe there, and not given, obviously we'd have to look into potential enforcement if there are additional works going on there. I wouldn't be inclined to allow the application until those matters were resolved. In terms of the flu, given the heritage of the area, and obviously I'm probably more mindful of it given where I represent, I would, be conscious that we protect the heritage of those Victorian buildings and screen as far possible that flu, regardless of whether it's in a conservation area or not, because, those residents have already been impacted by some quite unattractive commercial properties on the opposite side of the road. And also I would be asking questions about the garage. Where would their customers be parking, given that it's an active MOT garage? Because the fish and chip shop and the Chinese next to it don't really have adequate parking. If I remember, on a Friday night, the carnage that is caused with people trying to get their fish and chips. So I know that they wouldn't be active at the same time. However, I can see the overspill happening onto those commercial premises, and I believe some of them are open during the day. So that's, I think, as other councillors have stated, that is a concern. That is a bit of a pipe dream, that knowing people as we do, they'd walk down a very busy road to go and visit a cafe. I'm not sure whether the business would actually be viable.
Thank you, Councillor Riddingale. Councillor Arnold.
Yes, thank you. Raised by my fellow councillors here, I also have concerns around the MOT garage, use of parking. I mean, obviously, if it's an MOT garage, they're going to have cars waiting, sitting there to be looked at. And are they going to separate this parking completely so nobody can use it but the cafe people? I also have concerns around saying about putting a signage up, but by the time you've pulled up and read that sign, you're already on the parking spot on the forecourt. I know it says no takeaway, but where does that stand around businesses like Just Eat? They're not takeaways, they're delivery service. They have drivers constantly come to and fro-ing. So I have real concerns around all of those issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor McLean, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a different take on this, I'm afraid. I've lived in the area for 40 years and used to use the post office. It was revolting. It had parrots, it had mess everywhere. It's tidied itself up. Where do we have the right to say they can't have or can have when there is parking around the area? And there are people that are in residential properties that don't need a car. They could all walk from the local area. We are either for business or not, or where do we have the right to take it away when, it's another opening for that area to actually maybe thrive? We've got a coffee shop in Crouch Street where you can buy your coffee, but you're not allowed to drink it inside, and you have to use the council's bins to have them emptied. I think that's wrong. This is a business that will be self-contained, enhance the area, I think, because who would want to have the back garden looking a complete pigsty when it could be smart, tidy, and we're all speculating here, I feel, because what could or should or maybe, and I don't think we should. I think we should take it on its own merits of what it's offering. And I'm going to be obviously going against the grain here for everybody, but I don't think we should just shut it down, and I think people have a right to have a cafe if they want to use that. So, sorry, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Now, Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm on the fence. So retrospective planning applications come here now and again. I have concerns over the behaviour of the applicant, particularly around the stop notice, and then whether that's really a fact, I don't know. I'm not a resident in the area, but if work has continued since then, I'm slightly worried by that. But that's by the by. It's a very busy road. I would very much like to visit the site. So I would potentially propose, not refusal, because I don't think we particularly have grounds on that, because it is a lot of speculation. I would propose that we look to defer it and visit the site, check it out properly, look at what's in the area in terms of parking, and go from there. Because I don't think, because I'm pro-business, I don't think we should refuse something like that. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there, Chair. But I would propose a deferral.
Thank you, Chair. I would note in the report that it does say that it's in a sustainable location and would be expected to attract custom that is non-vehicular. Chris, can you come back on the points made?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll come back on some of the points, and then I think probably for the parking and highways issues, I can pass over to Martin to make a comment. I'll just comment on the other issues first of all. Again, in terms of provision within the cafe, toilets, etc., that's going to be a building regulation issue. The land at the back, we have got a condition saying details of amenity space for the dwelling should be submitted. We could potentially add another condition saying shall not be used in association with the cafe, which will then button that down in terms of people not overspilling into that area, unless another application is made for the change of use of that land potentially. So we could control that. Visual impact on the Victorian property. There are ways of hiding flues more. I remember dealing with one in Aldborough where you had a flue on the back of quite an attractive property in a conservation area where you had a structure with brick slips which covered the flue, which is a lightweight structure but visually looks acceptable. There are ways of doing that if that is required without causing massive structural problems to the dwelling. So we could enhance that condition to say cover a lot of the flue. I don't think you can cover obviously the top and where areas sort of have the extract, but I think you can cover quite a lot of the flue with something that could be appropriate visually. Because the properties are quite attractive, but nevertheless obviously it's around the back, so not much of an impact in the street scene. Enforcement action can be taken if other elements are continued without planning permission. I think the applicant and agent have got the message about not doing anything, but we do have an enforcement team if necessary. Signage, if you're wanting significant signage on property, there is a control under the advertisement regulations. You can do some adverts without advertisement consent, others are controlled by advertisement regulations. I think that's probably the issues covered from the planning aspect, but I'd welcome Martin's comments about the parking provision. Just one final comment, that the MOT garage on their plans have indicated there is parking to the rear of their property. There seems to be quite a large area down there. I don't think they'd be affecting their own business in significant way by meaning that their customers can't park in the garage area, or the cars being worked on couldn't be satisfactorily parked on that site. The plan indicates area to rear of site to provide parking for existing business use as car mechanic. Yes, over to Martin in terms of parking provision and parking pressure in the area.
Thanks, Chris. In terms of highway impact, I think Chris has covered it very well in his report and what he said this evening. I think we have to be very mindful of an appeal and whether we would have a defendable case. It is, in terms of the MPPF, it is very much an accessible location, very well served by public transport. And you'd like to think, being in a location like this, that people would walk and cycle. It would serve the local community. Let's go and have a cuppa and a gossip at the local cafe. So there's definitely that market there for that, I think. It's the right location. It's not in the middle of nowhere. But for those that do still wish to park, to drive and park, clearly they can't do that in London Road. There are waiting restrictions. And I think given the scale of the development, if you're that desperate to drive, then there are opportunities local to the area where you could park in a side road without causing detriment to highway safety and capacity, and that would be what would come out at the appeal. We'd have to try and argue that, and I'm not comfortable that we'd have a good enough case for that. Yeah, that's our position, and as I say, any further questions, I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you. I understand Simon wishes to make a comment, and after that I'll bring in Councillor Rippengale, who wants to come back.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's largely superseded, I think, by the fact that Chris referred to a potential condition or amendment of an existing condition to exclude the use of the rear garden area for additional seating. I appreciate the concerns of probably members and obviously local residents that if that quite substantial garden area were turned over into a large outdoor seating area, it could give rise to significant amenity issues. So we would certainly recommend that a condition be imposed if that is of concern to members.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Rippengale.
So I just wanted to be really clear about the signage and the impact visually on the surrounding properties. I would like us to look at a condition where it's in keeping with the area, just because I've seen some quite interesting signage down that road. So I would ask that it's in keeping with the area and isn't overly, I don't know how far we can go, but I would like us to review that it's tasteful and in keeping with the area and the heritage of the area.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Yes, just coming around the grease traps requirements. The grease traps then will need to be emptied into big barrels, and that needs a storage space. And the collection for those is quite a large truck. And I was wondering how they're going to negotiate around that pickup on a regular basis.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Okay, so Chris, can you address those additional points? And I believe it was discussed that it's possible to condition signage to point customers that wish to park a vehicle towards where the parking is further down the road.
Yes, Chairman, there's two aspects of the signage, really. Firstly, the signage that points people towards the garage, that could be adjacent to the door. Then there's also the normal advertisement signage where you put signage over windows and things like that. Some of that could be permitted under the advert regs. It depends upon the size of the sign, lettering, etc. But we could condition particularly this signage pointing to the garage down the road, and then that will give us complete control over that particular aspect of the signage. In terms of other signage, that may be permitted under the advert regs, depending, as I say, upon the nature, size of lettering, unless we remove the rights to put adverts, but that's not normally done, to be honest. The grease traps, That's probably more of an environmental health and building regs issue, but nevertheless there is quite a lot of space on site at the front, even with parking, to sort of park quite a large vehicle in the area where you look down towards the outbuildings, because there's quite a large sort of alleyway down there. So I would have thought this has probably got more space than quite a lot of other properties that have similar commercial premises. So initial view is that probably is not going to be too much of a problem.
Thank you, Chris. Just before I bring Simon back, picking up on Councillor Rippingdale's point, I thought Councillor Rippingdale may be thinking of what the business signage looks like, i.e. what the actual sign that advertises the business, and asking whether it could be conditioned to make sure that's in keeping with the area's heritage, which, as Councillor Rippingdale pointed out, is Victorian. Could you answer that before I bring Simon in, please?
Might be worth bringing Simon in now. I think from my point of view, the question is, can you withdraw the rights to put advertisements, across the windows? Can you withdraw those under a planning permission? I don't think you can, but Simon can never check on.
Go ahead, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chris is quite right. We couldn't exclude the provisions of the advert regs, unfortunately. But what we could do on a positive note, I think, is to put an informative saying when an application for advertisement consent comes forward, we will expect it to be sympathetic to the architectural character of the area and in accordance with our adopted shopfront design guidance. And I think it's a very valid point. There is some fairly poor signage along this stretch of the road, which is really unfortunate. So, to look to uplift this would be a great idea. So, totally support that, and an informative would do that. We could have a directional signage condition to highlight the parking, and we could do that by condition, certainly. And with regard to the waste pickup, I'd have thought that a Euro bin could be wheeled down to the road frontage for collection. There is quite a, there is a reasonable amount of space there, given that it used to be a rear service yard for the sorting office. So we should be able to address Councillor Arnold's concerns, which I think are very valid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, no one else is indicating to speak. So as I understand it, we're any approval would include conditions not to overspill from the calf into the garden, condition that the majority of the flue would need to be covered with something that is appropriate visually, and condition of the signing, as Simon has just outlined. With those conditions, is there a proposer to approve this proposal? Councillor McLean, any seconder? Any seconder? Okay, I'll second it myself. Could I ask those in favour? Yes.
Sorry, just to clarify that the final point regarding signage was an informative, not a condition.
It was. Apologies, it was. Thank you for that. I've seconded it. Could I ask?
Sorry. Simon has wished to indicate.
And a condition requiring directional signage to the car parking, Chair. We can also
yes,
include
thank
that.
you. Thank you. Okay, so could I ask those in favour of the proposals with those conditions and informative, please show.
1, 2, 3.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, the proposal is lost.
Do we have any abstentions, Chair?
Do we have any abstentions?
1.
One abstention. So the proposal is lost. So therefore, is there any proposals to the contrary? Is that what I would do next? Yeah. Is there any proposals to the contrary? And if so, could you outline what they are? Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. As I said earlier, I would look to defer this, and I'd be seeking a seconder, as I think it's important that we visit this site, because I don't want to refuse it, but I want to see it first, because there's some concerns that I think need addressing, and I think that's only prudent of us as a committee, and only right that we do that.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Is there any seconders? There look like there's several, so I'll choose Councillor Davison. So those in favour of...
Sorry, Chair, just to interlude, at this point with a deferral on those points, is sometimes if there are any other information that members do want to be brought back to the committee for the next time, now is the appropriate point to ask for that information. So it's just to clarify that point, but obviously Simon can.
Councillor McLean.
I'd just like to mention the industrial area it's in, with the automotive trade, your Chinese takeaways, you know, all these sort of aspects that are down the road. It is very much an industrial sort of route through, and has been for many, many years. So that's the only thing I would be mentioning. Is I don't know how you can hold up this application on the aspect of where it is and what it's involved.
And did Councillor Davison wish to speak?
I'd like more information as to how many parking spaces are potentially there at the garage. I mean, we hear there's more parking available at the back, but actually, I'm sure there's a lot of potential parking behind the actual property. I mean, the post van used to use it, so I think a site visit would be helpful.
Simon, is your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add that Martin Mason has very kindly offered to attend any members' site briefing visit. So if members think that would be positive, if they could indicate, and Martin will make accordingly arrangements to attend your site visit.
Thank you. Is it the, can members nod their head if they'd like to see, they'd like to see you come along, Martin. So can we vote on Sam's deferment? Those in favour, please show.
Seven.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. So the decision is to defer this and for a site meeting to be arranged, of which Martin Mason from Highways can be present. Thank you. Yeah, and it's 10 to 8, so if we could take a 10-minute break and come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, members, we're all back, so let's go on to item 7.3, which is Yara Family Resource Centre, Stanway Green, recommended for approval. Simon Grady will be the presenting officer, Alison Cox from the public speaking for, and Councillor Scott Boutel is the visiting councillor. So can I ask Simon whether you would present the application?
Thank you, Chair. Just need to work out how to. Why is it not coming up? Sharing.
Cancel it and start again. No.
There you go, that's the one. Share, got it. Apologies, good evening everyone. So this is item 7.3, application number 231933. It's a retrospective planning application for the addition of 2 detached structures used as incidental office space in connection with the delivery of learning disability services at Yara Farm in Stanway Green. The application is being considered by the committee tonight because Councillor Scott Boutel has called in the application. I'll just take us through these slides. So we'll start with the location of Yara Farm. This is Stanway with the 5 ways junction to the top. Let me just see if I can get a pointer. There you go. So we've got the 5 ways junction at the top here, Blackberry Road, Pear Tree Road, Winstree Road, etc. And the farm is accessed to the south here on Heath Road. You'll also see the Pear Tree light industrial retail park here. Next slide is not working. Here we go. So this is the extent of the site. It's a 15-acre agricultural land. The entrance is to the north here, where you can see the car park that's used. You'll also see there's a public right-of-way running north to the south along the western boundary of the site. And you'll see the local dwellings to the north there. And then zooming in again, this is the entrance to the north. We've got the car park at the top, and then this red line here indicates where the 2 structures have been placed. You'll see Wiseman's Farm immediately to the east there, which is a listed building. However, these 2 outbuildings here, immediately adjacent to the application site, are not listed. I've got some photos of the site as well. So these are the structures in situ. As I say, it's a retrospective application. This is a photograph looking south on the site. And this is looking east. So the yellow building on the left there is Wiseman's Farm. And then you'll see the outbuildings just behind the structures there. And then that's another view of the 2 structures in situ. You'll see they're shielded from the property to the east by this hedgerow also. So so you'll see from my report that it is considered that there is not an unacceptable level of visual harm caused by these structures in terms of their use, appearance and siting on the site. So in terms of their kind of physical appearance. And it's also felt that the addition of these structures do not constitute overdevelopment given the scale of the site. However, concerns have been expressed by Councillor Scott Boutel, by the Essex Highway Authority, although they have not objected to this application. And we've received 2 objections to the application, that the use of the site has seen an increase in traffic, which is contributing to congestion and damage to the land in the vicinity of the site. The growth of the service provided at Yara Farm over the past 10 years, I'm not sure what feedback is. Apologies, everyone. Is that better? So the growth of the service provided at Yara Farm over the past 10 years, and therefore the increase in volume of comings and goings, is clear and is not disputed. So the material planning consideration with this application is whether this increase in use has resulted in a level of harm to the amenity of local people, to damage of the area, or to highway safety at an unacceptable level, and whether the addition of these two modest structures that are the subject of this application have directly and demonstrably led to this level of harm. You'll see from the report that there is felt to be not a strong enough link to the addition of the structures, or that they have not led to a harmful intensification of use, or that even taking them away from the site would lead to a decrease in use. So on that basis, my report recommends that the application be approved, subject to conditions, including a condition that a travel plan be submitted to the local planning authority for us to approve, so that the travel plan can identify measures that the applicant can take to promote active and sustainable transport to the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Can I ask Alison Cox to come forward and to inform you you have 3 minutes and the bell will go after 2, and just turn your mic on when you're ready to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of my client's application, which seeks retrospective permission to retain the 2 structures which have been erected close to the east boundary. The Yara organisation have been on the site since approval was gained in 2014. They provide a range of crucial services which would typically fall under the umbrella of occupational therapy, including support in areas such as physical rehabilitation, teaching independent skills, and managing sensory/emotional difficulties. The farm provides a number of services, many of which are based in and around working with animals, on-site gardens to grow produce, and farm maintenance. The goals are to ultimately develop independence, self-esteem/well-being, social communication, physical mobility, and emotional regulation. It is important to note here that no planning conditions were attached to the original approval of the site, which was application 144778 in May 2014, which controlled number of visitors, service users, parking or operating hours. Of relevance here is the Highways Authority confirmed on 14th of June 2013 that they raised no objection to the proposal, and similarly, as Simon has said, they don't object to this application either. The buildings in question were erected around May 2023, my client inadvertently believing that they were permitted development. One of the buildings is used by service users during periods of inclement weather and for them to take their breaks. The other building now provides the main office for the organisation, with the previous office building having been converted to a sensory room. There is no doubt at all that the organisation provides an incredible service to a significant number of users, but neither of the 2 buildings attract additional users or generate additional parking needs or vehicle movement. Finally, it is noted that the council are seeking to impose a condition requiring that the applicant prepares and submits a travel plan detailing measures to promote active and sustainable transport. I consider that such a condition would be unreasonable when the LPA clearly concur that no restrictions were imposed on the original permission controlling the scale or use of the site, and the Highways Authority does not object to the development, and the development itself does not generate any additional parking requirements or vehicular movements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And could I ask Councillor Scott Boutel to step forward and say to any members of the committee, if you wish to speak, please indicate to my Vice Chair. And Leslie, you should know the rules by now.
There is a real concern to residents and Colchester City Council Parks and Recs on the impact that the parking off-site is having on Stanway Green. Stanway Green is a scheduled monument. To explain, the adopted highway finishes at the end of Heath Road. The road which runs around the green is owned and maintained by Colchester City Council. This private road is used to access Yara Farm. Bullet point 3.6 states that it is understood that Yara Farm pay to use the private road. Colchester's legal team were involved when Yara Farm needed to purchase a right of way for access. I'm unaware that there is an ongoing payment to the landowners for reinstatement of the road. Where is the evidence of the payment? Parks and Recs have confirmed that the impact on Stanway Green by the increase in traffic flow over the CCC land. They add that the CCC access road is narrow with no passing places, so off-site parking is now creating passing spaces. Again, further damage. The private road was not designed to access a building which has grown since original approval given. It is accepted that this successful business does fill a need, but because of the access and parking issues, it has now outgrown the site. I have noted an increase on complaints from residents about potholes from Heath Road to Yara Farm. Parks and Recs reiterate that Stanway Green is an ancient monument which is used for informal recreation and play. Residents have advised me that they can only see 14 parking spaces, which is achieved with double parking, not the stated 18. This is the reason why staff and visitors are parking off-site and damaging the green and woodland. I do not have faith that a conditioned travel plan will resolve the issues. Our poor dog walkers and walkers get the blame for generating traffic. I dispute this, as Stanway Green is a hidden gem in the community. It is local people who exercise their dogs and local people who explore the surrounding public rights of way. They walk there. They do not drive. They are not adding to the congestion. The committee report says there's no clear evidence of a material increase in congestion, and this would certainly have been experienced for some time now. Residents disagree, saying that they have experienced the material increase for some time now. The original application talks about the small scale of the proposed development approved over 10 years ago. The report before you acknowledges the growth, stating, "There is no doubt that the use of the site has grown significantly since the service started to be delivered at Yara Farm, but there are no planning controls in place to restrict the site's growth." That is not the fault of the residents of Heath Road and Stanway Green. I revert to my earlier comment that this successful business has outgrown the site. It is having a detrimental effect on my residents' amenity. However, further development of the site continues apace, leading to retrospective and withdrawn applications. The initial highways response acknowledges the impact on the Stanway Green access road. Although they did not object to the proposal on the highway land, the adopted highways land, they raised concerns about the significant intensive use of the site since the previous allocation, where there were only 2 to 3 full-time employees and 2 cars listed on the application forms. There are now 15 full-time and 17 part-time employees, most of which will drive to site. This alone will increase the traffic movements. This does not include the manoeuvring of minibuses dropping off and picking up from site, feed deliveries, animal waste collections, plus open days and events. They go on to say that the significant and unacceptable intensification following the previous applications bring added hazards to the equestrians and highways users using Bridleway 17. Essex County Council reinforced the points Parks have made regarding erosion, vehicle overruns on the verges, indiscriminate parking, turning and manoeuvring, and vehicular intensification of the use of the site, which is against the Highways Development Management Policies DM 17 and 11. They also note that there are no parking layouts or drop-off and pick-up points and areas within the application details. There is a later highways response received in April this year, and the respondent acknowledged that they had no prior knowledge of the application site and does not agree with the concerns raised in the former highways response regarding the private road and also Bridleway 17. Bridleway 17 runs directly across the entrance to Yara Farm. It is a highways asset, and the points that have been made in the previous response still apply. In short, the business has outgrown the site, and the retrospective addition building allows their continued growth, impacting on their neighbours, walkers, dog walkers, Colchester City Council and users of the Bridleway.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you. Can I ask Simon to address the issues raised?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think that the key thing there is that the use of the site has increased over the last 10 years. I don't think that's being disputed at all. I think the key thing is whether we can attribute those two structures that are the subject of the application to that increased use. I think that's the key thing. A couple of particular points in terms of the payments that is referred to in the report. I've spoken to a representative of the Parks and Recreation Department, and he's not aware of any payment going directly to them. So just for the avoidance of any doubt, it appears that Yara Farm are not contributing to any maintenance of the land owned by the City Council as outlined by Councillor Scott Butel. Just to be really clear, it's not possible to actually park on the green itself. There's a series of bollards that go around the actual the green itself, but it's possible to park along the edge and along the private road, along Heath Road. And then just a particular point also about the number of staff. Yes, the number of staff has increased a lot. I'm told there's 18 spaces within the car park. And of the 32 staff that Councillor Scott Butel referred to, they, as I understand it, they don't work all at the same time, so they work on a sort of shift pattern. So the 18 spaces that are provided within the Yara Farm site itself, behind the gate, largely deal with the staff who are working at any particular time. But yeah, I mean, the general point, I guess, is that whether we can attribute the addition of these two structures to the site, to this intensification of use and this harm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I don't have any indications of speakers. A couple of questions in my mind is there any damage to the actual scheduled monument due to the vehicular use by Yarra Farm, and is the fact that they're not contributing to the maintenance of CC land an issue that can be picked up in this planning application or not?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can speak to the Parks and Open Spaces Department again. I understand that there is something called an access licence that might be able to be pursued. I don't know too much about that, but I can certainly speak to them to see if there is a mechanism. I don't know whether that's something that the council would kind of wish to do or not, but it's something that I can follow up on if that's considered to be appropriate. I don't know about the damage to the actual scheduled monument. My understanding is that the part of the site is on a scheduled monument. We haven't had any objections from Historic England or anybody in connection with this application, but there'll obviously be no damage to the underground archaeological remains in the area. I don't know if Simon wants to add anything on that.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the area closest to Yarra Farm, it's like a small green area. It's surrounded by wooden bollards. The rest of Heath Road is sort of semi-woodland, quite dense woodland, and I can't see there's really many opportunities that you could actually park on that section. So in terms of the area where one would expect incidental parking to occur, that is prevented by the bollards, which snake their way all around that open space. So I can't see, other than people parking on the road itself, maybe with a couple of wheels off, that would be the case. And certainly looking at the image of that green area, it looks very much untrafficked. The sward extends all the way up to the edge of the tarmac in the images anyway, and there's no apparent evidence of rutting or other damage by vehicles in association with Yara Farm. Thank you, Chair.
Lucy, you wish to add something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wondering whether the committee members would like to see some images of the green, to just get that in your minds.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So I'll start with a couple of photos that I took on a particular site visit in January. See if I can make that. So 10th of January. So yes, frost on the ground. So this is the green here. The Yara Farm site. Let me get my. So the Yara Farm site entrance is there. This was about 8:45 in the morning. I think I was there, and then I've got this one as well. So this was. Along Heath Road, so 5 Ways is behind me, and that's the entrance to Yara Farm straight in front of me there. I did see a couple of people in one of these cars along here get out with a dog and a lead, but this is an example of what it looked like on that particular occasion. I can also share Google Maps Street View if that would be of any use.
By all means, yeah.
It shows cars, so yeah.
Okay, I'll try. Bear with me. Yeah. Bingo. Yeah, so this is again the same view. Looking towards the Yara Farm entrance. I'll just show you the entrance. So it's there. So the car park is behind that gate, and you can see a car parked there, and another one there, and one there.
Okay, thank you, yeah. So my question remains, in terms of you're asking for approval for this application, are the road issues, could Simon guide us on whether they are issues that we would pick up in this application, or are they not something we would consider?
I think the difficulty, Chair, is establishing any causation between trip generation and these particular buildings which have been erected on site, having regard to their use. There is nothing to suggest that they in themselves, which is what the development before us, is actually leading to an intensification or generating trips. I'm very much aware of the fact that obviously the success of the site has led to an intensification, but I think we shouldn't conflate that issue with the development that's before us for consideration, which has a very specific ancillary office use, as opposed to being additional classrooms or community space where clients would use that space. So in terms of trip generation, which seems to be our main focus of concern and intensification of use, I would suggest that the built form, the development before us, doesn't actually generate trips. But we have Martin Mason here, so let's ask him for his expert opinion.
Thank you, Simon. Chair, I'm not sure I can add to that. I think that's the point, isn't it? It's this application that's before you. I'm not sure you can hang at least a highway objection defendable on that. It's just become more successful, hasn't it, than first envisaged. And the difficulty here is when you have this piecemeal development, isn't it? Trying to prove that the impact is severe enough to defend an appeal. I don't think that's the case here.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Davison.
Thank you. I tend to agree in that it's obviously serving a very useful purpose for people that need to have space and practical things to do. And obviously these small buildings give them at least some shelter from the English weather. So the only thing I was going to comment on is that the original application was in 2014, So actually they haven't got a permitted right over a private road at this stage. They've only just, I don't think they'll have done 10 years quite yet. So the owners of the road could enforce a payment which would help maintain the road, that's all. Because obviously there's quite a few houses further on that use it. Because it does seem unfair that one commercial business takes advantage of the private users elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Councillor Tate.
What I was going to say has really been covered by Simon and Martin. It's we have to look at whether it's grown, and fantastically so. It does a really fabulous job. But are those two buildings responsible for the growth or connected to the growth? And I don't think that we can say that they are. Okay,
thank you. So maybe the issues raised about rights of way is something that can be pursued by the council separately. Yeah. And could I therefore ask whether there is a proposer to approve the application? Councillor Tate, anybody seconding? Councillor McLean, all those in favour?
It is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and there ends our meeting at 8:25. Thank you.